I don't want to go all Shirley MacLaine on you guys, but there is something about this children with past lives theory that kids from 2 to 6 have come up with these really shocking stories about who they were in past lives. And it sounds crazy, and this is all reincarnation, but there are things that you just can't explain, where these kids know things they shouldn't know about somebody else. 2 examples.
He said, Mom, I have something I need to tell you. I think I used to be somebody else. And he started just telling me these stories about how he had lived in Hollywood. His stories were so detailed. It just wasn't like a child that could have made it up.
She turns to a page and I say, that's me. That's who I was. That's me. Yeah.
Gus was 4 when Ron was given an old family album. To his parents' astonishment, Gus was able to point out his grandfather in an old school photograph. He also correctly identified this as the first car that his grandfather ever owned.
He showed me a picture, and then I said, that was my first car. And then my dad was like, that's weird, because the car was Grandpa's first car. So it was all scary.
The through line of it that's disturbing is that a lot of these children who talk about these stories are citing their death was something violent like a homicide.
And they're scared to death of the manner of death that the predecessor experienced.
I mean, how do we explain a child or multiple children who actually know to concoct a story that they were murdered?
We don't know what they're exposed to in the household to trigger that, and I'm gonna say it's fantasy and suggestibility.
I 100% disagree with you. I think conversations like that are the reason why kids don't say anything.
Right, because you make them feel crazy.
Because you make them feel crazy when actually, I just feel like you should embrace what the child is saying because there could be truth in it.
On the other side of this, though, there was a very famous case in LA, the McMartin preschool molestation case, where there were scores of kids who were pointing the finger at 2 people and saying they were the ones who molested us, and it turned out the whole thing was a crock, and that it was suggestive, and they were found not guilty.
Kids are incredibly suggestible, and there have been multiple studies after the McMartin case because it was such a problematic case. The thing is, I'm willing to say, all right, let's not dismiss it, but the problem I have from a scientific standpoint is that because we do not know what these kids were exposed to prior to providing this narrative, it muddies everything.
But they're 2 to 6, so they're not these kids that are so conscious of everything that they're gonna parrot. I mean, they're little kids.
The stuff my daughter would say at 2 blew me away. It made me think of Bill Cosby in a good way.
I don't know how that.
But what I mean is that the stuff that she would start talking about was unbelievable. So, like, even if I go in with an open mind, the problem I have is because it's not a controlled group, right? Like, if you look at it scientifically, we do not know what these children were exposed to.
We know what people say they were exposed to.
Precisely.
But we don't know what they were exposed to.
And that's the problem.
The details the kids got right about the person they used to be is pretty uncanny.
This kid points out his grandfather when he was like 8 years old, the grandfather, out of a big crowd. I mean,
I absolutely think that it can be true. And I am at the age where all of my friends have very young children, and they will tell me, I don't understand where she could have learned this, where she could have got it. I just feel like you should embrace what the child is saying because there could be truth in it. I think that naturally kids, yes, they're sponges, but they know way more than we're giving kids the benefit of.
If these kids have psychic abilities to be able to see through the eyes of someone who's already passed, I think that's, if you're gonna venture into that realm, that's more plausible to me, that they haven't actually lived that life, but they're seeing through the eyes of these people and thinking that it's them, because I have met some very gifted kids.
I want to tell you a story, because I see this so vividly, and I'm an old guy. I was 6 years old, and we lived in an apartment in Los Angeles, and I was walking on the street, and I saw a plane come down and crash on the tree right next to me. And it didn't really happen, but it was so vivid in my mind. And to this day, I can't explain how real that was. And I remember thinking, there's some connection here. And it's lived, and it has stayed with me to this day. It is so real to me, but I didn't have that kind of crazy imagination. I mean, it was such a one-off. I think it was somebody in a past life. I honestly, and I know that sounds crazy, but it's so vivid.